Test. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the March 18th meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission. Today is an incredibly special day where we are going to spend some time this morning honoring, it's going to be a rough morning, just so everybody. It's going to be beautifully rough. We'll just put it that way. We're going to start with our procedural items, and then we're going to go into a remembrance of Michael Moreno. So at this time, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Neoma Jordan.
Here.
Ed Lawson.
Here.
Bill Thomas.
Here.
Bob Lucy.
Here.
Vaughn Hartung.
Here.
Darren Tedford.
Here.
Adam Spear.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move into item 1.2, the Pledge of Allegiance. And if we could have Mr. Dan LeBlanc lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. We are going to go to item 1.4. We have a driver recognition item, which is 1.3, but I understand the drivers aren't quite here yet. So we're going to move to item 1.4, which, as I alluded to a moment ago, a remembrance for Michael Moreno and his countless, immeasurable contributions to our community. So with this, I'd like to turn it over to Director Thomas for some opening statements.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to make a few comments, and I'm making these mostly on behalf of the employees of RTC, particularly those who have had long-term relationship with Michael and worked through the many years. For me, it's just been the most recent 2 years, but it gave me a chance to learn more about Michael than I knew in the many years that I worked with him outside of RTC. I'd like to take a moment to recognize an outstanding employee and a respected member of our community who recently passed away. Michael Moreno started at RTC on May 13th, 2002 as a marketing associate. During his tenure at RTC, he also worked as a community outreach officer, public information officer, and was promoted to public affairs manager in 2014. His time with RTC spanned nearly 2 decades. Michael's been an integral part of the RTC over the years. His leadership shaped the RTC's award-winning community outreach strategies, and he was instrumental in creating the RTC's long-standing public affairs television segment, The Road Ahead, on KOLO 8 News Now. He led outreach and communication efforts for some of the RTC's largest projects, including the Southeast Connector, the Virginia Street Project, the 4th Street Prater Way Project, the Pyramid McCarran intersection, and many, many more projects. Michael truly shined at his work, and his legacy at RTC will live on. He enjoyed networking and advocating for RTC's plans, projects, and programs to anyone who would listen, and befriended many people in our community as he did his work. He was a tireless advocate for all things RTC. Our deepest condolences to his family, his friends, and his colleagues. He will be greatly missed. We have a brief video that showcases some of the most memorable moments at RTC over the years, and so if you please join me in watching this video.
Thank you to staff and everybody that compiled that incredible video compilation. I mean, to say that was just a tiny bit of what Michael contributed to this community is just a huge understatement. At this time, could I have the family come join me up here at the podium? We have a few things for you. Jack, Jacqueline, the grandsons, all the family. Come up around, please. So while we have, Director Thomas has hit on a number of the items that Michael was a huge part of in this community. It was so great, his communication and his outreach. And he always was professional in every setting that he was in, every setting that he was in. I can be a little spicy at times, and Michael, he just had that little giggle. Never participated in anything outside of the lines, and always tried to bring people to a consensus and to a positive resolution. But I think what many in our community maybe didn't know was the very, very deep roots that Michael had in the Hispanic community and the changes that he made, which are forever structuring the amazing community we call home. So on behalf of the City of Reno and Mayor Sheevy, I'm reading this proclamation. If you can't tell, we loved Michael. Whereas, on behalf of the City of Reno, we wish to record our deep sorrow over the passing of Mr. Michael Moreno on January 25th, 2022. And whereas Mr. Moreno was a beloved father, grandfather, husband, friend, community volunteer, and trailblazer for the Northern Nevada Latino community. And whereas he grew up in Carson City and spent his adult life in the Reno-Sparks region. And Mr. Moreno was an accomplished and well-respected individual who served in the banking profession, served for the U.S. Senator's Office of Richard Bryan as an area director, and was deeply involved in the Hispanic Business Chamber. And whereas he was one of the Latino pioneers who established the Hispanic Business Chamber when he worked as vice president of Wells Fargo and was fundamental in establishing the first Hispanic Summit for the state and the Hispanic Heritage event at the University of Nevada, Reno. And whereas his life was dedicated to the best interests of his community and his beloved family. Whereas the City of Reno, along with his adoring family and friends, were blessed to have known him and been a part of his amazing life. Now, therefore, I, Neoma Jardin, on behalf of Hillary Sheevy, Mayor of the City of Reno, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, January 25th, 2022, as Michael Moreno Day. I don't know if you all noticed in the video the smile that Michael had, and it shines on through his grandsons. It is their smile. So to the grandsons, your grandfather was incredible. He will be forever remembered, and he will have a Moreno way. We have a couple more proclamations.
Madam Chair, this is a very difficult, as you pointed out, morning for us. Jacqueline, it's wonderful to see you, and then the family and the kids. Michael, in my tenure in office, has been a tremendous friend, mentor, asset to me that has meant the world. I can't tell you how many countless hours I spent with him and Lee on an airplane back and forth from DC. But your father spent many, many days and many hours not fighting for just himself, but fighting for everybody. He spoke of his family so highly and loved you and Jack, everyone, dearly. He would work tireless hours, but he knew when he had the time off and spend it with family, he really, really, truly enjoyed it. And I can't tell you, those flights, those long, long flights across the country, how we would talk about the kids and his grandkids. So Chairman Hartung and I would like to present you with a flag on behalf of Washoe County and RTC that was flown over the Capitol in your dad's honor. And so this will always be, yeah, I'll read this. So this flag, in Michael's honor, this is a flag of the United States of America. This is to certify the accompanying flag was flown over the United States Capitol on February 2nd, 2022. At the request of Catherine Cortez Masto, United States Senator, this flag was flown for Michael Moreno in honor of Michael Moreno and his decades of public service in Nevada and all of his hard work in transit and infrastructure for the people of Washoe County. So with that, we want to give it.
So at this time, Director Thomas, I believe we wanted to open it to those who have come to join us here today.
I have one more proclamation. I've been asked to read a proclamation on behalf of the City of Sparks. Whereas the Regional Transportation Commission is a valued community partner and leads transportation programs, projects, and initiatives in our region, and whereas Michael Moreno has served his community and the RTC for the past 2 decades as the Public Affairs Manager, Public Information Officer, and Community Outreach Officer, and whereas Michael's leadership shaped RTC's award-winning community outreach strategies, and whereas Michael was instrumental in creating the RTC's longstanding public affairs television segment, The Road Ahead, on KOLO 8 News 8, or KOLO 8 News Now, and whereas Michael helped to create and implement the RTC's federal strategies, making sure our elected representatives were informed about RTC's work in the community, whereas Michael helped improve the City of Sparks through his outreach and his communications on many projects, including the Pyramid McCarran Intersection Improvement Project, the 4th Street Prater Way Project, the Vista Boulevard Widening Project, the West End Prater Way Project, the Victorian Avenue Project, and by helping bring the Lincoln Line bus rapid transit service to Sparks. And whereas Michael's outreach and the work on the ongoing regional transportation plan ensures his legacy will continue to live in our community. And whereas he was a tireless advocate for transportation in our community, ensuring everyone had a voice. And whereas Michael Moreno was a beloved father, grandfather, husband, and valued member of our entire community. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Ed Lawson, Mayor of the City of Sparks, do hereby proclaim March 18th, 2022 as Michael Moreno Day in the City of Sparks, and urge all residents to recognize the contributions Michael Moreno has made to transportation and the community outreach in our community. In witness thereof, I have hereto set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Sparks, and it's signed by the Mayor of Sparks.
Thank you very much. We know as much as Michael meant to those of us here on the board. We know he meant a tremendous amount to many in the community, many who reached out to us who are here today and wanted to say some words about Michael Moreno. So at this time, we are suspending the rules of our professional procedural meetings, and we are inviting members of the public up to say a few words. So if you guys are welcome to sit down.
thank you for hosting this commemoration of Michael and his achievements and all he meant to us. I just want to say how grateful I am to have known him as a friend and a colleague, and to be inspired by everything he did for this community. Because at his core, Michael was absolutely dedicated to this community and did everything he could to serve it and to make it better. And he knew that the way to do that was to involve the residents and the businesses and anyone who would want to talk to RTC or our elected leaders or the representatives of our projects. And that's what it would take to make RTC successful and our community successful. And he just put his heart into everything he did, 100%. And I just really, really miss him. But I appreciate his legacy, and I'm going to do, and I think we all will do what we can to continue that legacy. Thank you.
That was beautiful, Amy. Thank you. I see some others. We don't have a formalized process. If you're interested in saying a few words, just come up to the podium.
My mom, who's the clerk to the board, Denise Thompson, she moved me and her up here when I was very young. I was about 4 years old, and she moved up here for this job, and she's been there a very long time. I don't know the exact amount of time, but nowhere near as long as Michael. But that's all to say that I grew up around Michael. He was always such a kind man. He was always so confident sounding, at least in what he said. I really looked up to him, and I know he was such a dear friend to my mom. And it's so unfair that he passed away so soon. And I wish he could still be here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is hard. My name's Sandra Rosenberg. I work at NDOT. Michael is one of the first people I met at the RTC when I started at NDOT 13 years ago, and he has been a partner and a friend ever since. He was a true public servant and a champion for this community. He'll be missed, he'll be remembered, and he's still with us, so thank you.
Yes, he is.
Thank you, Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. So I was at Jack's this morning for breakfast. We'd go there, sit with Michael. He'd prep us for the meetings, making sure we didn't say things that were, bad, things like that. And so I'm going to miss him. I am. He helped me a lot, and he helped the RTC a lot, but he's living in all our projects and all the transportation and everything that we do every day.
It's hard, but I know he's here with us. On behalf of my wife, my community, his family, I know he was a very family man. He cared for his community. He cared for the leadership of the Hispanic community. As of yesterday, we are creating a leadership, Hispanic leadership, and his name was all over the place. And I know Michael, he's here with us right now, and I just want to, great memories. I tell you, it's hard to believe, but he's here right now. Thank you.
Yes, he is, and he adored you.
Good morning. My name is Mike Davidson, and I'm the president-elect for ASCE Truckee Meadows Branch. On behalf of the ASCE Truckee Meadows Branch and its members, we would like to extend our serious condolences to the RTC on the loss of Michael Moreno. It is safe to say that Michael was instrumental in not only all things RTC, but just in our community in general. The effort Michael put forth in everything he did, business and government, media affairs, community engagement and outreach, was second to none and always to a high level of professionalism. And also, having worked with Michael on past RTC projects, he was one of the most personal people I had ever met. Just some context, how he related to ASCE. He actually was the last person that presented to us at an in-person meeting at one of our monthly meetings. This was in February 2020, and it was just before the pandemic shutdown. He provided us a presentation on the 2020 census. And those that knew Michael knew that he was very passionate about the census. So we were very fortunate to have him present to us and our members. So there's no doubt that Michael was important to our community, and he will be truly missed. Our condolences go out to all RTC staff and Michael's family and friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also know there were a tremendous number of the members of the AGC, which I think a number of them are with us here today, whether they speak or not. Michael's impacts were broad.
My name is Doug Malloy. I started at the RTC just a few years before Michael, so I had the pleasure of working with him all these years. I'm going to say 2 words because I don't know if I'm going to get through this. Pride and passion. Michael was all about that, and he knew how difficult it was for me personally to speak with the public, but he is here, and he was always there for me to kind of coach me through things. And no matter how bad I may have botched it up, he'd say, "Doug, you did just fine. You just settle down. You did just fine." I always remember that. I have a quick story. I hope I can get through it. Michael worked with us when we had the Vista Widening project, a big project that was one of the first RTC 5 projects to be delivered in our community, and he had a lot to do with that, by the way. I'm certain that he did. Anyways, we're out there. We got a ribbon cutting event. He was always so instrumental in setting those up. And we're all there and gathered, and this woman drives up in a car, and she gets out of the car, and I could tell something was really wrong. And I had started to approach her, a couple hundred feet from the event, the tent. Everybody's there to celebrate, right? And this woman's getting out, and she's starting to complain, and she was complaining that the project should have been done 10 years ago. And I couldn't believe it, and I'm sitting there, you got to be kidding me here. You know what we're doing, right? Michael intervened, and as he always did, very calmly, he handled the situation, and he settled her down, and she was off, and fortunately didn't interrupt the event. He's missed, greatly missed, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak today.
That was beautiful. That was really beautiful. Before we turn it over to and I think we all have a Michael Moreno story, but I'll just give a quick one. Michael was all about the individual. And what do I mean by that? Michael knew, he was fantastic at knowing what the interests and needs of the individual in which he was speaking to was about. He paid attention to the little things. And I'll tell you an example. So I've been to probably, 10 groundbreakings. And if you've been to groundbreakings, you're supposed to wear sensible shoes. And, you're going to be in the dirt, and you've got a shovel. Well, Michael knew that I didn't do that. I'm a high heel skirt kind of girl. And Michael, when we would go to do the shoveling, to throw the dirt, he always would direct me to a certain spot. And I thought it was always for the photo and who was in what position to rank and who was in what elected position. It wasn't that. I caught him one day. He was tamping down the dirt. He was tamping down the dirt so that my high heels wouldn't sink in. And that was Michael. So at this time, if there's nobody else from the public that would like to speak, if the family would like to say any words, we would love to hear from you. We know this is hard as well, but we invite you if you'd have anything to say at this time.
I'll do it. Hi, I'm Art, Michael's younger brother. or as he liked to call me, his little brother. All these stories are amazing. My brother was a true champion of this community. He leaves a very great legacy. Not only was a great leader, he was an amazing older brother. He leaves behind my sister Liz and my brother Alex. We will truly, truly miss him, everything he's accomplished and everything he did for our family. I want to thank you all for having us here today. The stories are amazing, funny. My brother was a great man, and thank you again.
Thank you again for everybody that was here with us today. And I don't know if the board has any closing comments. I just know if you speak of someone, they never truly are gone. So speak of Michael often. Commissioner Hartung.
Can we give Michael Moreno a round of applause?
Yes, we would like to give Michael Moreno a round of applause at this time for all he contributed. Thank you very much. And Madam Clerk, we will now return to our regular agenda and procedural process. We will go to item 1.3, driver recognition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As they always say, the show must go on. So I wanted to move on to the next thing, which is a different kind of celebration. Today is National Transit Driver Appreciation Day. Without the transit drivers, basically, we don't have a transit system. So this is a very important day for us here at RTC. The RTC recognizes and appreciates the work our contracted transit drivers do for our community. To honor these hardworking employees, RTC sponsored, which is in a small way a recognition, but nonetheless a recognition, donuts and coffee this morning for all the drivers. Both Keolis and MTM are also planning recognition events throughout the day. And I would personally like to take this opportunity to say thank you to these drivers for the important work they do in our neighborhoods. We have two representatives today, one from MTM and one from Keolis, who are with us this morning. Can I ask Yolanda Cobb to stand up, please? Yolanda is a very special person to us in our community. She's an MTM operator. Yolanda was hired in 1988 and is considered a pioneer in ADA transit in our community. Many things have changed since then, with the exception of Yolanda's safe driving record of 34 years and her love and her passion for the RTC Access clients. She says she's not ready for retirement anytime soon, and we're thankful. And I know when RTC Access clients greet her with a smile when she comes to pick them up, as it really keeps her going. Among numerous awards, former Senator Harry Reid bestowed Yolanda with a service award for her outstanding work in the community for her 20th work anniversary. Yolanda was also named the National Catherine Mcclary Operator of the Year Award winner. This award was established to honor the memory of Catherine Mcclary, who was tragically killed in a bus crash in 2004. The award recognizes the safest transit operators. Yolanda is appreciative that RTC Access and MTM Transit didn't furlough any employees during the pandemic, which she says would have been devastating to her and her family. In addition, she says she appreciated RTC and Mtm Transit efforts to keep operators safe while encouraging safety protocols and having sufficient supply of masks, gloves, sanitizers since the beginning of the pandemic. So what I would like to say on behalf of our board, Yolanda, and hopefully you'll share, who can't, of course, all be here because they're busy today driving the buses, how much we appreciate you personally and your coworkers and how incredible the work you do is for our community. So thank you very much. Next, if I can ask Jeff Ramoshetti to please stand. Jeff is a Keolis coach operator, a Reno native, and he served the Washoe County community by providing transportation for more than 13 years. His transportation career began in 2009 when he started transporting students safely to and from school for the Washoe County School District. In 2020, he accepted an opportunity to become a bus driver for Keolis. Jeff is a tried and true professional. He exudes contagious enthusiasm and has deep insight into transportation. The customers he transports on RTC Ride are always cared for with skill and compassion. Jeff meets everyone with a huge smile, and his attitude is positive and welcoming. Jeff assists and participates with several community events each month, including the weekly Worcester High School student field trips for special education class. Jeff also represented Keolis in the Virginia Line Extension Media event. It's safe to say Jeff is a pillar of our community and takes pride in the work he does for Keolis on behalf of RTC. Jeff also has aspirations in moving into a supervisory role someday. He's a dedicated driver and a valued person in our community. His coworkers and supervisors say he's a pleasure to work with and a great access to Keolis and, again, our community. So on behalf of the board and the employees of RTC, Jeff, I'd like to thank you for your great work and ask you also if you could share that with your peers and let them know how much we care about the service they provide.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm not very good at this, but I just have to say my heart goes out to you folks, and I'm so grateful for what you gave to our community. Thank you so much for that. It was beautiful, everything you said. And thank you for your, sorry for your loss as well. I know how much you meant to this community. I grew up here when I was a little kid, and it was a small town. You guys know this. And the way you've expanded our city is just a wonderful thing, and he was such a big part of it. So thank you all so much. Thank you. On behalf of the beautiful introduction that I got there, thank you so much. That was one of our operating managers that wrote that up. It was very nice of him to do that. And I want to accept this on behalf of the people I work with, my fellow operators, brothers and sisters of the Teamsters 533. And I'm glad we're going to be back to full service very soon. We've been hiring a lot of people, and I understand we're going to be back and better than ever for all the people in our community and the passengers that ride. So thank you for letting me speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, one more thing. I have to say thank you to Yolanda. That's just an amazing story.
Thank you. And I love your mother. We'll just squeeze in here. Okay, Mrs. Moreno. Do you want them below and us up here? Where would you like us? See, this is where Michael would direct us. Okay.
Okay, that's good. All right. 1, 2, 3. smiles. Thank you.
I think so.
I don't have one. You guys don't let me in the building. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Thank you for all you do. Thank you. At this time, we will transition into general public comment. Public comment taken under this item may pertain to the matters both on and off the agenda. Public comment on a particular item on the agenda at the time it is discussed is the specific items. If you want to speak on one of those, comments are to be made to the board as a whole and not to individual commissioners. At this time, we will go into general public comment. And Amanda Nelson.
Good morning. I'm a driver for Keolis and RTC. So today I wanted to talk about us being able to be heard by you guys. You know, we have issues, concerns, comments, and we don't really, aside from right here, have a way to express them to you directly. I know that there was a discussion about a panel of drivers to sit down, you know, once in a while and have a discussion with you. And I would like to bring that up again. I think that would be a really good idea. You know, I mean, you can do all the computer generating routes and times and everything, and it doesn't compare to actual drivers who are out there in the coaches day in and day out. We know what goes on. I'm a trainer. I know every single turn, every single route in this town, and you know there's issues, and sometimes it seems like it falls on deaf ears, and we'd like to see if we can arrange meetings between, you know, directly with the RTC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jeff Church.
Thank you very much. Such a moving day. I hate to talk about routine business stuff, but such a moving memorial this morning, as well as I appreciate all of the RTC drivers. And then across the world, of course, in the Ukraine, I'm wearing my Support Ukraine ribbon. I left a couple others up there that somebody made for me, just in case you want one. I want to talk about RTC 5. RTC 5 is the gas tax that is Washoe County specific, although there's a similar one in Las Vegas, and it goes up every July 1st. I'm asking you, when you consider this on April 15th, to make sure the wording of that agenda item is an action item and is worded enough so that we can possibly ask the county commission to cap the tax. At a bare minimum, cap the tax for the next year or two. I'm told the inflation rate is the highest we've ever seen it, and we don't need another tax increase right now. I just left Maverick gas station, $5.05 for regular. I bought gas a couple days ago in Carson City, $4.55. That's a lot, but it's 50 cents less than here. And that goes up every July 1, as it has done for many, many years. So I'm not suggesting that we stop the tax. I'm not suggesting that we reduce the tax. I'm suggesting that we cap the tax. My daughter did some research. She said every one of the M states has actually lowered taxes temporarily. So I'm asking you to consider that and ask the county commission to put that on their agenda prior to July 1 to possibly cap that. A second issue, I don't know where the clock is on my time, great. light rail. I was actually, Mr. Moreno, there was a great picture of him in front of the depot. The depot was actually the old trolley station between Reno and Sparks. And then there was another trolley that went down to Moana Springs. Light rail is a matter of time. It's not if, it's when. We have a wonderful university that could do research on the feasibility of that, but I really do think time has come to address light rail. I know one of you sitting there today has addressed it before in terms of the tracks to Fernley, using that. But light rail is something kicking and screaming we just have to look at, and we have to consider that. And again, you have a wonderful university, put somebody working on their master's or their PhD to work on that. I did a lot of research. I'm a history buff. We had the trolley up until the 1920s when the automobile basically put it out of business. It could be a wonderful tourism event as well as commuters, et cetera, et cetera. So again, the views I speak today are mine, but please do consider when you look at the RTC 5 gas tax increase, maybe we can cap that at least for the next couple years. And I did have a handout for you, so hopefully you got that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Chris Fuqua.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, I am Chris Fuqua, Vice President of Teamsters Local 533, and it is nice to be back here on 9th Street. Last month, the board unanimously passed the $6.76 increase to Mtm Transit per service hour rate. Thank you for doing that. For those of you that do not know, Mtm Transit is the RTC's paratransit contractor, and Keolis is the fixed route contractor. The paratransit is a smaller RTC access shuttle buses that provide door-to-door pre-scheduled transportation for passengers who have disabilities which prevent them from riding RTC Ride independently some or all of the time. The contract between Mtm Transit and Teamsters Local 533 expires June 30th of this year. The union is hopeful that the $6.76 increase will help ensure our members at Mtm Transit receive a livable wage, a better funded pension, and better insurance benefits. We know these essential workers that serve our community deserve it. Mtm Transit has agreed to meet for a couple of days in early April for in-person negotiations at the Teamster Hall here in Reno. At this time, no other dates have been agreed upon, but Mtm Transit is pushing for virtual meetings while the union is hopeful to have more in-person negotiations. While the Teamsters Union and Mtm Transit do not always agree upon everything, which is normal, we currently do not have a hostile relationship, and we hopefully will keep it that way. I want to remind the public and the RTC board that on December 1st, 2021, Tahoe Transportation District Board of Directors unanimously approved a $4 increase for all transit staff, which include bus operators, dispatch and reservationists, utility workers, and mechanics regardless of tenure. This $4 increase went to everyone, whether they only worked there for a couple of months or a couple of decades. They all received a $4 pay increase, and these same essential workers will still be receiving up to an additional 4% increase on July 1st of this year. As far as I'm aware of, the RTC board has not publicly told Mtm Transit how to use a $6.76 increase, but I am hopeful that the RTC board gave some indication to the Mtm Transit that this money was intended to improve our essential workers' wages, pensions, and healthcare benefits. Investing money in our essential workers is an investment in our community, and it will help retain and attract the workforce that we need. This essential workers provide a crucial service for our most vulnerable citizens of our community, and we will have a better idea of Mtm Transit's next month. Thank you.
Gary Watson.
Good morning.
Gary Watson, President of Teamsters Local 533 for the record. The Teamsters appreciate our transit members that work within the RTC systems. If you truly appreciate them, then you should invest in them. Keolis workers were left behind when you only invested money into the Mtm contract. Last month, you just upped their service fee. This could have been done a long time ago to stop a lot of the strife that we had last summer. Our fixed route transit workers deserve more from you. They deserve better accountability of your contractor, Keolis. And they deserve dignity and respect. These workers have been abused and violated by your contractor. This board, through Mr. Thomas, publicly supported and stated Keolis was bargaining in good faith, while the Teamsters were not. This settlement agreement with the National Labor Relations Board regarding labor violations that I emailed to all of you yesterday states otherwise. 17 additional labor violations settled. This brings the total to 40 labor violations. This is unacceptable. This is unheard of in my career here at the Teamsters to see one contractor settle 40 labor violations. The RTC board and Mr. Thomas should publicly denounce Keolis, their actions, and they should offer the passengers, our community, and our members a public apology. You should retract your endorsement of Keolis and put safeguards in place to protect our workers from this draconian behavior. Hopefully, this is a lesson we can all avoid repeating. Moving forward, it is paramount that we have better transparency between the RTC, the contractors, and the Teamsters. We should strive to improve our transit system for its workers and passengers. Thank you.
Carlos Elizondo.
Hi, my name is Carlos Elizondo. I have a concern about how you changed the Virginia line, you know, where it used to be behind the one all the time. And most people, you know, they don't like that, you know, because the Virginia line just stops and goes, just like a jet, it stops and goes, stops and goes. I've been catching the Route 1 and the Virginia line I'm going to 8 years, and a daily basis more than once a day. And these buses, what do you accomplish by having these buses running bumper to bumper and empty? I mean, running an empty bumper to bumper. Sometimes you see about five buses going outbound and none coming inbound, or vice versa. And my other concern is about, like I did mention it, about if you spend a day in downtown, you see those buses all through the day, out of service. Never seen this before until Keolis took over. Never seen this before. If you spend a day in downtown, you know what I'm talking about. And another thing is about you know, they do multiple routes, and the buses always not running on a schedule because sometimes they're gonna catch up, and especially on new drivers, they don't know the town around, the routes around. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, the only public comment I have remaining was a written email from Sparks Flores, which I believe has been distributed to all the members.
You're correct.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we are going to move into item 3, approval of the agenda. Director Thomas, do we have any items in which to pull? No? Okay, looking for a motion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. This time we're moving on to item 4. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment under the consent items? Sorry.
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners wish to pull any items for discussion? Seeing none, may I get a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 5.1. Acknowledge receipt of a report regarding the Lemon Drive segment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this matter?
No, we do not.
Okay. Good morning. It is still morning, right? Yes. Good morning.
Still morning. Morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of the board. Dale Keller, Engineering Manager with the RTC. So today I'm going to provide a update on the Lemon Drive Segment 2 roadway alternatives analysis, and also present a recommended agency endorsed alternative for consideration. The project limits of the Lemon Drive Segment 2 are from Fleetwood Drive around the elementary school all the way around Swan Lake to Ramsey Way, where Lemon Drive terminates at the Reno-Stead Airport. In the winters of 2016 and 2017, our region received or saw record-setting snowfall as well as rain runoff that created localized flooding, predominantly in the closed hydro basins of Lemon Valley. Now, the goals of this RTC project is, one, to build a safe and reliable regional road during a 100-year flood event of Swan Lake. Two, help support our agency partners in that long-term flood response strategy. And three, to ensure that connectivity for future road network improvements. So to determine the best roadway alternative, the RTC, as well as our Project Technical Advisory Committee, or TAC, established a two-step screening process. The step one, known as the level 1 screening, began with brainstorming ideas with an open-minded approach, so identifying all possible alternatives and concepts. 12 alternatives, A1 through A12, were identified, including a no-build alternative, and a consumer's report type evaluation of good, fair, and poor was identified to identify potential advantages and disadvantages. Now, each alternative had key assumptions, so we were going to reconstruct the roadway above the 100-year floodplain. We'd widen the roadway to 4 lanes from Fleetwood Drive to Deodore Way, that's around the Lemon Valley Elementary School, as well as reconstruct the multi-use path. Now, based on the results of the level 1 screening, the 3 top alternatives were presented to the RTC board back in August of 2020. Those 3 alternatives were Alternative 2, elevate the existing Lemon Drive, where we'd raise the profile and reconstruct the existing Lemon Drive along the alignment all the way up the Ramsey Way, shown on the left side of the screen. Alternative 6, the natural berm alignment, where we'd realign Lemon Drive to the west along the natural berm of the Swan Lake, and then abandon portions of that Lemon Drive, as shown in red. This alternative was also received some high support and recommendation from the board back in August. And then last one, alternative 8, was realign Lemon Drive to the east along Deodore. However, this project limits extended all the way at the Ramsey, and the alignment didn't provide a viable solution for that regional connectivity. So hence, this alignment was eliminated for any further consideration. So staff took the comments from the board and advanced the top 2 alternatives into the level 2 screening for further qualitative evaluation. This criteria was simplified to 3 characteristics. The first one was determining those impacts. The second was the mitigation measures. So as an example, the stormwater volumetric mitigations was that 1.3 to 1 requirement that we have, as well as third is the overall project cost reasonableness. To summarize the level 2 screening results, each alternative was take a look at the same type of approach we did in level 1 screening with that consumer report, the good to fair to poor. At the top of the table, the additional screening reconfirmed the top alternative is successfully achieve our goals of safety, access management, and emergency response. But as we dug deeper, there's 2 main differences that stood out, was construction impacts and then the volumetric mitigation. For construction impacts, for the raised Lemon Drive Alternative 2, we felt it was a little bit more difficult to actually raise and build up the roadway while working with existing traffic. With the natural berm alignment, it was more easy to shift it away from the existing traffic and construct the roadway. The next one here is the stormwater volumetric mitigation. There is a significant difference to satisfy this requirement. So for the elevate or raise Lemon Drive Alternative 2, we would need to move 100,000 cubic yards of material to satisfy this condition versus only 10,000 cubic yards for the natural berm alignment. So that's a 10 times difference. Lastly, there's roughly about a $10 million difference between the two alternatives, with the natural berm alignment being the lower cost. The cost differences contribute to the stormwater mitigation, traffic control impacts, as well as the permanent erosion control. So to conclude, the overall evaluation framework that we've created provided a comprehensive and structured approach to select a preferred or an alignment, select an alignment. RTC staff, as well as the draft final report, is recommending the natural berm alignment as the agency endorsed alternative. For the next steps, we recognize that more agency coordination is needed, as well as and further engagement with the stakeholders and public outreach. This engagement continues with the North Valley's Citizen Advisory Board in April. And finally, I'd like to highlight bullet number 3 here, is the RTC is pursuing federal discretionary funds through the RAISE grant. We feel this is a great opportunity that meets and it can be highly competitive and also exceeds all the merit criteria. Applications are due on April 14th, and based on the success of this application, it's really going to set the stage for the further environmental final design and then construction. That concludes my presentation, and I'll open it to any questions.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Keller. I appreciate the presentation. Can you go back to your map, which is, I don't have the page number, I'm sorry, that shows that exactly. So the red line is the current Lemon Valley Drive.
Correct.
That belongs to the city of Reno, if memory serves me correctly. That's their roadway. Is that going to remain intact, or are we going to remove that, or is it going to become a pedestrian, or I'll refer to it as a multimodal pathway? What's the thought process out there as you have been working with our regional partners?
Commissioner Hartung, what we envision is that road would be abandoned or removed completely, and we'd find opportunities to either utilize that for more volumetric mitigation or help with that long-term flood response strategy with Washoe County or the city of Reno.
Okay. So we wouldn't have because I know that there's like a bike path and some other things there. So all of that would be either removed or just the roadway would be abandoned and utilized for other purposes? Explain, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so during final design, we would find what the best maybe optimized way to reconstruct that multi-use path and what is best for the region. So that, once again, what's engaging the public, understanding what we're going to be relocating that multi-use path. We'd have it follow the alignment along the new Lemon Drive with that natural berm.
Okay. All right. One last question, if I may, Madam Chair. Timing.
So we're in a great position for timing. We're completing this alternatives analysis. As we progress with this RAISE grant opportunity, we're moving in parallel to progress the 30% design of the agency endorsed alternative. With that, we'll continue with our outreach process this summer. And the big question is, how do we fund this for the construction? So that piece of the puzzle is still to be determined.
Actually, I won't get into this right now. I'll get with you offline. I'm curious about the soils in the berm and what kind of issues that we may run into to ensure that that roadway is stable. So
Understood.
I'll talk to you about it afterwards. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Keller, you spoke about timing. What's the likelihood that we're going to move? When are we going to have shovels on the ground? I know we're waiting for grant funding and some different challenges, but what shovels in the ground?
So right now, this project is identified in our regional transportation improvement plans for the RTIP. And it shows, I think, in the year 2025, if I'm not mistaken. So it is in our first 5-year timeframe to get this project constructed.
Okay. From my standpoint, the sooner we can put the shovels in the ground, the better. This has been something we've been working on for quite some time, and I understand the studies and I understand what we need to do, but we need to this is one of the issues that we've been working on that needs to get rectified sooner rather than later. And I know it's 2022, but 2025 is 3 winters away that can cause quite some challenges and some issues. So I'd like to see this thing moved ahead as quickly as possible. I know Commissioner Hartung has worked on this tirelessly, and it's just time that we start moving forward as fast as possible. Thank you, Mr. Keller.
Thank you very much. May I get a motion to accept the report?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 5.2, thank you very much for your presentation. Item 5.2, acknowledge receipt of a report regarding micro-modal regional traffic management strategy. I should have put my glasses on.
Madam Chair, before we start on this, I just wanted to give a little pretext to it or beginning. Sarah's done a great job with this, and I think you'll see the quality of her work on this as she makes this presentation. But I wanted to just bring to the board's attention when we talk about this matter that there's two particular goals that this will be addressing. One is that we had as a goal, we needed to define RTC's role in the e-bike world, and I think you'll see this is a good first step to give us direction on how we're going to move there. The second is for us to look at the whole bike ped and multimodal projects to provide more clarity in the purpose and intent. So I wanted to preface what she's going to say with that, and I think you'll be very proud and find this presentation very informative.
All right, well, thank you, Bill. All right, again, my name is Sarah Going. I'm a traffic engineer and project manager with RTC Engineering, and I'm here to talk to you today about micromodes. So we're talking about bicycles, e-bikes, and e-scooters in particularly, and how we see those fitting into our overall traffic management strategy. So some goals of this presentation today is to provide you guys with some education on multimodal facility design to give us some framework for our conversations going forward. Also to discuss some opportunities for micromodes within our transportation network and hopefully move forward strategically with our multimodal projects in the future. So starting off, we want to talk a little bit about our regional growth patterns. As many of you know, we're experiencing a lot of outer suburban growth. And this outer suburban growth, as it all flows into the urban core, is having a major impact on our major arterials, in particular our freeways and our suburban connectors. As it flows into the city, it also affects our urban arterials, and these are particularly a problem because we don't have as much space in our urban core, and so right-of-way costs a lot of money in these areas. So how are we managing traffic with all of this growth? There are really three strategies that we're using at RTC. The first is with operational improvements, so we're making the most of the lanes that we have. Next, we go for capacity expansion, so that would be adding more lanes. And once we've made the most of the lanes we've had and we've reached our right-of-way limits, we can't add any more lanes, we really have to consider this final option, which is trip reduction. And that's really why you have your friendly neighborhood traffic engineer today to talk to you about bikes and e-bikes, because that's the role we see they play in our traffic management. So why should we consider these micromodes more seriously? The first reason, there's been a really major increase in accessibility to e-bikes and e-scooters, especially in the last decade in particular. And these modes are really feasible for trips for under 5 miles. They're also very space efficient, especially when it comes to parking in particular. And finally, they're really coming whether we like it or not. As you guys know, City of Reno is working with Bird Scooters on an agreement to launch this spring. So we're going to be seeing those scooters on our streets really, really soon. So how can we better accommodate this growth, and what does that look like on our roadways? So knowing many of you are transportation geeks, much like myself, we're going to get a little bit into design. I'm going to start with our design for motor vehicles. There are really two factors that control almost every decision that we make on the roadway, and those are speed and volume. With speed, we know that higher speeds make conflicts more dangerous on our roadways, and higher volumes make potential for conflict more numerous. So in our roadway design, as speed and volume increase, designers use separation to prevent those dangerous conflicts. So you'll notice on our high-speed, high-volume arterials, there are less intersections, there are less driveways. It's because we want to separate out to reduce those conflicts. When we move on to multimodal streets, we want to follow a really similar design methodology. We want to consider the speed of travel of each mode and the volume of each mode. A question that we get a lot is, when do we separate out these modes from each other, and which modes get their own space on the street? So we have many, many, many modes we're trying to accommodate. We have motor vehicles, bicycles, scooters, pedestrians, wheelchairs, our transit vehicles, rideshare vehicles, even segways and one-wheels are on the rise. I think we can all see it would be impossible to give all of these modes their own space on the street. But if we break it down by our design methodology, especially speed, we can see that there's a lot of overlap in many of these modes. And really, our modes break down into 3 major speed classes: the motor vehicle speed class, the micromode speed class, again, so those are our bikes, e-bikes, and e-scooters, and finally, our pedestrian speed class. So these are really the 3 distinct groups that we need to accommodate with space on the road. So when do we separate out these speed class groups and when can they share space effectively? Similarly, again, to our vehicle roadway design, we want to increase separation with increased speed and volume. So we know at higher speed, conflicts are more severe, and at higher volume, those conflicts can be more numerous. Our goal is to reduce the number and severity of conflicts in our multimodal design. So I'll go through some examples. This first one is a neighborhood local street. We have low vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle volumes. So, and low speeds also. So conflicts do not happen very often, and they're not severe when they do happen. So all modes can really effectively share space in this scenario. Next, on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have our freeway or our principal arterial. These, we have extremely high traffic volumes and extremely high traffic speeds. So we know the risk for conflict is high and conflicts are severe when they do happen, and this is a space that we universally recognize it is not safe for bicyclists and pedestrians to mix with vehicle traffic. Next, increasing in complexity, we have our Suburban Arterial. Here we have Veterans Parkway. Again, we have high vehicle volumes, high vehicle speeds, but we have lower volumes of bicyclists and pedestrians. So this is a good option to maybe use a shared use path where bicyclists and pedestrians can share space while being separated from the high speed and high volume of vehicles. And finally, we have our most complex scenario, the urban arterial, where we have high vehicle volumes. We have an especially high number of pedestrians in our downtown cores. And so this is a place where there's a high potential for conflict between pedestrians and micromodes in particular. So this is where we would look at giving pedestrians their own space, micromodes their own space, and vehicles their own space on the road to prevent those conflicts. So going back, the separation between vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic is something we've really widely applied on our roadways. But how do we extend that into the micromode context? For micromodes, bicycles, and scooters, it's the same methodology we're applying. We want to match the level of separation with the level of traffic stress, especially. So where we have higher vehicle volumes, there's higher traffic stress, and we want to increase our separation from that traffic. So the goals of this are to reduce dangerous conflicts and also to improve clarity and interactions between all the road users. I think it's important that we don't get too caught up in the terminology. I think we're all hearing a lot of cycle tracks, buffered bike lanes, green paint, and bike boxes. And it's important to remember that these are all tools that we use in design to increase separation. And a really successful bike network that matches the level of separation to the level of traffic stress may use a number of these or none of them if there's low traffic stress. So looking at our region and where we are today, we've come really, really far with bike lanes in particular. So these blue lines and these orange lines I'm showing on the McCarran Loop are all of our existing bicycle facilities. But if we break this down by FHWA criteria for matching level of traffic stress to level of separation, we really actually only have these orange facilities here. And you can see they're not extremely well connected. So we have a ways to go on our network here. I think we also recognize that applying this level of design to every single street is really not feasible, but we do have a number of opportunities, and we can really focus on where those opportunities exist and create a regional network that's going to be useful for micromode users. So rounding back to our regional growth patterns, like I mentioned, we have a lot of these opportunity streets, especially in our urban core. And some of these regional roads are really not seeing the same growth as our urban arterials, and that's really because they're not on the commuter paths of these suburban growth trips, and many of them are not freeway connected. So a good example of this is Vassar Street, east of Kitsky. That's that picture that's up there. It's 4 lanes plus a 2-way left turn lane. It has a current capacity of 35,000 vehicles a day. Our 2019 traffic volumes were 7,000 vehicles a day, and our 2050 travel demand model only estimates about 9,000 vehicles a day. So we have a lot of extra space on that road for traffic we don't anticipate is coming. So we'd like to use these opportunities to strategically apply micromode infrastructure. And so we have many of these opportunity streets, and it matches into our overall traffic management strategy because many of these opportunities are parallel routes to our major arterials that are right-of-way constrained. Excuse me. And that we're seeing a lot of pressure on. So some good examples of this are Keystone Avenue and Vine Street near downtown. 4th Street in Reno and 5th Street are parallel routes, Pyramid Way and 4th Street in Sparks. Kitsky Lane and Kerman Avenue, and again, Mill Street and Vassar Street, like I mentioned before. So we think we can utilize this capacity or these slower contact streets and build a network of low-stress routes that are more useful to micromodes. So what are the network benefits of this? How is it going to benefit the overall transportation network? So we know from our data that there are over 570,000 daily trips under 5 miles in length. You'll remember I mentioned earlier that's a very feasible trip length for a micromode. We don't anticipate all of those people are going to switch to micromodes, but 5% is a realistic number based on other cities that have this type of network. And even 5% of that 570,000 daily trips is 28,000 daily trips. And to put that number in context, that's about the same number of trips that are using our most used free spaghetti bowl ramp every single day, the eastbound 80 to southbound 580 freeway ramp. So it's a really significant number of trips. So overall, really this strategic implementation of multimodal projects and micromodal infrastructure in particular, we think can really help our long-term mobility in our region. And that concludes my presentation. Again, I'm Sarah Going with RTC Engineering.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was fantastic. You did a great job. That was very thorough. This is just the ground, setting the ground for what the philosophy is and the strategy is. There's no specific roads, no specific direction in which you're seeking today, correct? Okay. With that groundwork, I'll turn it over to commissioners if they have questions or comments.
I'll be the first this time, how's that? So I think what I'm more interested in the city of Sparks, we're pretty much landlocked. If you want to ride your bicycle to the river, you have to go down McCarran and on a path that's about 3 feet wide, and 18-wheel trucks going past you. I certainly wouldn't take my children on that path, so you end up driving to the river to take advantage of the path going back and forth. Same thing up 4th Street and down 4th Street. It's a smaller deal, so that access to me means a lot more. Being a brand-new e-bike user, it becomes blatantly clear to me that we do not have enough bicycle lanes and travel. So that's, for me, Sparks is landlocked. So if I want to get to the river, McCarran's my only choice at this time. I can't use Vista or Sparks or Rock because of the underpass. I wouldn't take my own life in my hands to go into that underpass with cars, the volume there. So, and then, like I said, if I want to go to Reno, my real alternative is 4th Street. So I'd like to see that somehow to give us more connectivity to the different parts of the region from the city of Sparks perspective. I know it's planned in the Vista expansion or the Sparks Boulevard expansion, but it doesn't help us this summer. Thank you.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation, Sarah. Define for me, it says Pyramid and 4th Street and Sparks. Give me a definition. I mean, what's the radius of that area?
Absolutely. So this is really focusing on urban core, particularly within the McCarran Loop. So 4th Street and Sparks extends all the way from Victorian Avenue all the way past McCarran. So that would be a parallel route for Pyramid Way through that whole segment.
Okay. And to the mayor's point, I mean, even trying to ride down Pyramid, I mean, you've got some sidewalks and et cetera, but it's even in Sparks, you know, once you get past McCarran heading south, you know, towards the freeway, I mean, it shows the changing mindset, but I also had another question with respect to, you brought up Veterans Memorial Parkway. And there's a wonderful bike path that goes down the side. Do we know what the percentage of commuter versus recreational? Because every time I've driven that way, it really seems like they're not commuting, they're recreating.
Yeah.
Thus the little benches and, you know, the stops where people can kind of enjoy the, you know, what's out there.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't have the data on that, but we could get back to you if we were to collect commuter versus recreational traffic data.
And again, it's not saying that we don't need these kinds of paths, but I wonder, given the numbers that you put out, the 5%, I wonder about the accuracy. I mean, I personally, and even if I could ride, which I'm not physically able to ride the distance from my house out in Spanish Springs into town, I don't think any of my colleagues here would want me to sit with them after that ride. Just saying.
You said you gotta be riding.
So, I wonder what's commuter versus what's actually just recreational, because the people I see riding down the Pyramid Highway, those guys are not commuters. Those are cyclists who are, you know, training for some event or something of that nature. I consider that recreational, not commuter traffic. So it would be interesting to just kind of see what the real volume is that of commuter and the desire for commuter. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Lucy? Did you
No,
have anything?
thank you.
So is it fair, I know we talked about this at length at our strategic planning session, correct? So this is a result of some of that direction. Is it fair to say we have in the past maybe tried to be all things to all users on all roads, which is impossible given the constraints of finances, road widths, et cetera? And now with collaboration between RTC and the jurisdictions is more in conjunction with the data to say, okay, on the, I'll call them more interior roads, which are the lower speed sort of roads, that's where we should be focusing our attentions for these multimodal and the varying ways of multimodal, rather than trying to have a bike lane, a scooter lane, and a pedestrian lane on North McCarran, as an example. That is that's a commuter, high-speed road. Is that fair, is where we're heading with this?
Sure, there's just the reality that on higher speed, higher volume arterials, we need more separation in order to reduce conflicts, and that separation comes at a very high cost, especially on our already right-of-way constrained urban corridors. So when we're looking at, it really takes a network to make any mode of transportation feasible. When we're looking at applying that network, capturing that 5% of trips, it's much more feasible to do that, to provide that level of separation on our lower volume, lower speed roads than it is to take it arterial by arterial, which is frankly much more expensive approach.
Okay, which I think is smarter. I think, you try to do too many things, you might do them good, but not great. So it's better to be strategic and focused and in collaboration with the cities to say, okay, which roads make the most sense and go through that fiscal and deliberative process. So thank you for this. This is simply a accepting of the report, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If we're prepared, may I get a motion?
So moved to accept the report.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries unanimously. Item 5.3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This item and the item that follow are really follow-up to the board retreat. And what we're asking for today as we talk about these two items is to make sure that we're on target with what you said to us in terms of how we move forward with these key issues. I'm going to hand it over to Erica. I think she's on the phone.
No, we have to call her right now. so-
Okay.
I
So
don't want-
I'll
I don't
talk a
want-
bit while we get Erica on the phone. Go ahead. Sure.
I feel like we're Donnie and Marie, we passing the mic on. So, to legal counsel, can we open these together, but you are asking for two separate motions, or can we open them together and have one motion?
It's at the discretion of the board. You could open them together.
Okay, thank you.
This item and the item.
So I'm going to open both these items.
Erica, are you there?
Good morning, I am here.
It's all yours, Erica.
Awesome. Good morning, Commissioners. Director Thomas, thank you. And did I just hear that both of these items are open? Okay, perfect. And the audio is just a little hard to hear, so I will be brief. Please let me know if you can't hear me. Again, thank you for the time. The purpose of this agenda item and the next one is to follow up specifically from the strategic planning workshop that was in January. Just looking briefly, if we could please, at the next slide to recap, we jumped into that workshop with 4 big topics to dig into, and we jumped in and addressed the first 2. So we're coming back today to recap that conversation, as well as talk specifically about next steps and moving that conversation that we had into actionable work streams. So the 2 topics that we addressed was rebuilding public transportation, and had a lengthy conversation about that, and then RTC's regional role in road projects, processes, and engaging jurisdictions, and that's a bit more of a topic that went more broader, I would say. And the other 2 topics we didn't get into, so we'll put those on the parking lot for another conversation. Just by way of reference, from January, we took all of the conversation, 3 or 4 hours, pretty big, I would say, long-range thinking, and boiled that down through a director's retreat as well as working sessions into several actionable streams. And what we wanted to get done today is validate that we're on the right path, that we heard you and we're heading in the right direction. So let's jump into the first one, which is rebuilding public transportation. And we just have 2 slides for each of these, so very brief. So here's the direction that we boiled down from several hours of conversation related to rebuilding public transportation. So what we heard from you all is rethink and redefine the whole system with the outcome of providing access to everyone who needs transportation through a suite of options to meet the current ridership and deliver more opportunity to serve more of our residents. Just pausing there for a quick second. Again, as workshops tend to do, there was a lot of different points that were made, and we felt it was really important to crystallize, all of that down into what we're really trying to get done. So hence the headline and a clear outcome. That unpacks to 4 points a bit more, and that is evaluating ongoing ridership and workforce trends, reviewing the provision of RTC ride services to ensure that vehicle sizes and vehicle types match the demand for service, support the creation of additional microtransit services, and really looking at leveraging technology to improve operational efficiency and effectiveness, as well as the customer experience. So obviously there's been a lot of conversation related to public transportation. So this topic is, again, a little bit more defined. Director Thomas is going to talk about next steps on the next slide, and then I'd like to just pause and make sure that those are the right high points, and that is, what you're expecting to see come out of the work related to public transportation. Director Thomas?
Thank you, Erica. So getting to the next steps, we were fortunate in the timing of this conversation that we were starting on our 5-year effort to update our strategy for how we provide public transportation, otherwise known as the TOPS plan, which you authorize us to move forward on. We have a consultant on board. So the most important next step is we will be coming back to you in April with some information on a couple of options in terms of how we implement the thoughts that Erica just described. So today I'm not going to get into any details, but I just wanted to share with you that the way we're looking at responding to what you've said is when we look at rethinking the transportation system, we really want to focus on the customer's experiences and start there. Like what's happening with the customers? How are they responding to the way we're providing service? Because at the end of the day, without the customers, there really is no need for the service. In addition, we're looking at what the needs really are. While we listen to wants, we're really focusing on the needs. And then how best we can meet those individual needs. We also are looking very closely at defining the cost effectiveness of services, because we all know that the funding for our public transportation is through a sales tax. That sales tax is variable, but it's also fixed. So there isn't a direct correlation between our ability to raise money and the cost that we see in terms of the different levels of service. So it really has to be a constant optimization of those resources to get the most service for the individual. What we'll also be doing is determining how to allocate those resources equitably, so we make sure we look at the equitability issue as we look at sharing those limited resources. And then lastly, on this particular issue is establishing objective metrics so everybody can understand the outcomes and there's less confusion about our successes and where we need to tweak or adjust our service, so that we're measuring performance in advancing what you all see as the visionary and the leadership board the community really needs. The second thing is we've learned over time we really need to maintain a healthy transportation service. And what I mean by that, if you think of public transportation as a service, it is a publicly funded suite of strategies to help people who need it the most. And that's really what we found out, during the pandemic is there's a subset of our community that really doesn't have options, and we really always need to keep our eye on that when we provide our service. But also to be real strategic about how we supplement, for example, our core service of the fixed route 40-person buses with other current options, as well as anything that may evolve over the next few years. As we all know, technology is making a big rapid change, even rapider change in our life than it has been in the past. So this is being sensitive to what you've said to us in terms of innovation and technology to really make sure we play that into how we create what we are calling a healthy transportation service. So I will stop at that and see if there's any comments before we go to the next item.
Thank you very much. Commissioners have any questions or comments? Commissioner Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to see this wrap up of what we're working on from the workshop. I believe this is the right direction. However, when we have the discussion about moving forward and reimagining what public transportation looks like in Washoe County, I want to make sure that when we talk about customers, that we're not just talking about customers, available people to ride the bus, that we're talking about every citizen, right? Every citizen who they may not be a customer today, but may be a customer tomorrow, seniors, disabled, children, it doesn't really matter. I want to make sure that we have that kind of alignment and a thought process moving forward so that we are addressing, but we want to make sure that we are constantly moving forward to make this a efficient way of moving people, but not only for the community, but also cost efficient, not only for the customer, but also for our operators to continue to make this as functional as possible. So that's really kind of the cornerstone. I like where we're going. I think everything that we've discussed in the board workshop has been addressed in here. So I'm just looking forward for that continued conversation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Lawson.
So I think it's important we know how many riders that we have today and how they're using the transportation. So there may be alternatives that we can work into the solution by knowing what that individual need is and how many individuals are riding. So to me, that's important.
Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is something you've heard me say. I would love to see an audit on ridership, time of day. And is there a better way to move people throughout the system? And I genuinely believe that when we start looking at where people are coming from, where they're trying to go, the time of day that they're trying to get there, I think our system will become far more user-friendly, and I think we'll see an increase in ridership, not a decrease. Because right now, and you've heard me say this on numerous occasions, I watch the 40-footers go by, and you can count the number of people on the bus in one hand, and that's just not a good use of resource. That driver could be utilized elsewhere and just doing things potentially a different way. Maybe we flex those routes. I don't know what the answers are, but I think until we do an audit on ridership and time of day of that ridership, we won't really understand where and when the needs are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I agree. I think you captured everything, Erica, in this, and I appreciate the thorough way you've gone through all this to capture it. I do think as we're looking at the pandemic did really bring to light just the different ways that people move around or don't move around. There's what are the trends as it relates to going back to the sort of corporate commercial hubs versus working from home, and even those working from home, where is that trending? What does that look like? I do think, too, once we do this analysis and we look at what the more customized ridership based upon the need looks like, we have a lot more options to maybe fit those needs. And if it works outside of a full route, full bus, is there opportunities to partner with the Washoe County School District to help meet some of their needs to increase our ridership at the same time meeting a need for them when they're struggling? I don't know. Are our routes super busy when school goes in and the kids get out of school? I don't know if there's opportunities to expand ridership, introduce people to public transportation through a partnership with Washoe County School District, and maximize the use of our resources. So I think it's great. I think this has captured where we wanted to go, and I'm excited about what transit looks like in our community as we move forward. So with that, if I don't see any more questions or comments, so we're moving on to the next item. Okay. Erica, you're up on the second item.
Awesome. Thank you for that feedback, and thank you for validating that we're on the right track with an understanding that there's a lot more detail to get into. And as Director Thomas said, it's great that the TOPS process is coinciding with this discussion. So that's helpful. All right, jumping into the next topic, which is RTC's role in development and the future of our community. Just jump into the slide that says direction from the January board workshop. I think it's slide 9. Again, a lot of conversation on this. This is a little bit less defined than the rebuilding public transportation topic, but we have worked through several discussions based on what you provided in January, working groups, and summarized as follows. So we need to address the development impacts on transportation differently. That today's approach and tools do not appear to be adequate. And what would the outcome of trying to do this be? Evaluating the landscape of transportation decision-making across our region and look at how to realign this better to serve the needs of the community. That unpacked into 2 buckets. One was new and expanding roads, and the other the current system. So under new and expanding roads, some of the questions that need to be answered, or you suggest need to be answered: how can we take a more regional view to development? How can we collaborate better? And can and should RTC play a bigger role to help proactively think about transportation impacts? And then under the current system, a bit more straightforward, who owns what and who needs to maintain what roads? So again, just kind of putting a headline on all of this. This is a little bit more amorphous, but again, trying to make this really actionable and moving forward some of the direction from the workshop. Director Thomas will talk about 2 solution areas that we have landed on or are proposing.
Thank you, Erica. So those 2 areas, just to be succinct, are new and expanded roads, and then also local roads. And the reason we picked those is because they do, while the whole network includes all of those, there's different ways and approaches to address it. As Erica said, this is a very large and complex question or problem you've posed to us that, in short, we can't solve on our own. So what our recommendation is that we need to sit down and start having conversations about changing the way we're doing things that include NDOT, that includes the 3 local governments, because at the end of the day, we have a role to play as a regional provider, but what's probably not going to work is us telling people what to do. We need to figure out how to be facilitative and problem solvers, so the local governments, who I have no doubt will retain and want to retain the decision-making authority on how their communities grow and develop, but we become a stronger partner in helping them in their decision-making. We have some ideas. It's a little premature to tell you what exactly those are till we can vet them with our regional partners, but the plan would be to come back and talk to you. At this point, that may or may not turn out to be changes that we need to make in terms of the authority of RTC, but we're going in assuming that that's not what we're doing here. We're really just going to have a transportation-focused conversation based on the issue you've raised with the 3 local governments. And we've got that started, and we'll be moving hopefully quickly. I would be lying to you if I said it's going to move fast, because there's a lot of people we're going to have to bring on board and ask them to open their minds about how we can fix this. The second thing is local roads, and I think that was particularly discussed, and maybe local roads, I'll just explain a little different, is, the 3 local governments essentially own the roads. They're the owners of the property, they're the owners of the roads. In addition, NDOT owns certain roads. And what I heard in the dialogue and what we heard is that it's time to look at all of those ownerships and really make a more concerted, conscientious decision on intent in terms of who owns what and who's responsible for what, because left to the kind of trend we're on now, at some point in the future, RTC would probably own all the roads from the standpoint of accountability, but not really own them. So this is also one where we're going to have some deep and engaged conversations with the 3 local governments and NDOT also to try to figure out who's the best lead, if you will, or accountable agency for the different parts of our roadway transportation network. And of course, that will then lead back into the first question, which is decision-making, better decision-making as we relate to growth of the community. So I know there's not a lot of finite details to give you right now, but I think at this point, all we can say is we heard you, we're moving forward, we're going to engage the local governments to see if we can come up with some actionable steps to make things better.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments at this time? So is it fair to give an example of if we know at the City of Reno, if we know, as an example, Verdi, we know that Verdi is, the land is allocated, we know it won't be more than 3,000 homes, and then that's built out. There won't be anything more there, that is capped. And we know all of the allocation of those projects are out. They might not have been built yet, some of them are, some of them aren't, but you kind of know the scope of what's coming. Would it then be through the City of Reno and potentially the builders to coordinate the infrastructure as it relates to roads or the improvements based upon that knowledge? Is that where you see this going?
Taking that as an example, where I see it going is, I think the frustration that you've expressed is that often you're at a decision-making point without good information about where your decision is going to lead. So here's your example. I think it would be an intentional conversation with NDOT, the City of Reno, Washoe County, and RTC about the Verde area, where we look at the build-out and we say, here's what it's going to look like. Now let's talk about who's going to do what, when's it going to happen, because I feel like a lot of times having multiple players is a good thing because more people, more minds at the table, but it causes confusion for the public and often for you as elected officials when it feels like people are pointing fingers back and forth at each other and there's no resolution. So what I heard from all of you is get with the regional partners, come up with a better answer in terms of who's going to do what in the long term so everybody knows their responsibilities and accountabilities, not only for you as decision makers, but also for the public.
Commissioner Hartung.
I think one of the things that's left out of that conversation, especially right now, is the triggers. You know, at what point we know that we have approved and not yet built, and the problem is that it's not always one single developer. You say, okay, we have 1,000, we'll just use 1,000 houses just as the example. We can use any number, it doesn't matter, 500 houses. One developer comes in and does, 120, another one comes in and does, 90, another one comes in and does, 87, another one comes in and does 112, and we don't really seem to be looking at those triggers, at that cumulative effect, which is what I'm going to touch on later, which is what has happened in the Spanish Springs Valley over the last 30-plus years. And it's very frustrating for me because we have seen no capacity improvements. And again, I'll touch on it later when we get to that point. But what are the triggers that we need to put in place to say, wait a minute, stop, we've been collecting these RIF fees, or maybe there's another fee. I don't know what the answer is to put development in a position where growth pays for growth. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That is the thing which might tie into some of, I know there's been discussions about SADs, because this isn't the first time everybody's talked about the infrastructure needs of a variety of fronts, whether it's a road or water infrastructure or additional services, fire, police, whatever it may be. And this might segue into global discussions as a region about SADs and how those sorts of infrastructure items get funded potentially by the developer on the front end, knowing there's an SAD that might collect it on the back end. So anyway, just food for thought. Yes, I do. I do think I think we need to have a very aggressive discussion about SADs and their use here in our valley. So with that, do I have any other commissioner questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, may I get a motion? And we're taking a motion on both together, or would you prefer separate?
Madam Chair, I believe it's at your discretion to do it either way.
Okay. We got that okay from legal twice, not just once, but twice.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we accept the direction and reports for item 5.3 and 5.4 today and move forward with staff direction.
Thank you very much. May I get a second? I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motions carry unanimously. Thank you very much. Item 6.1, Director Thomas, your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 3 items I wanted to touch on today in my report. First, I want to congratulate 3 employees. All our employees important, but particularly these today. Jenna Boga, sorry. I tried to pronounce it and I tripped over it. Jenna's a paratransit eligibility and mobility specialist who's been with us for 5 years. Starting as of February 13th. So very important part of our accessibility and our paratransit service. And I want to thank Janice for her service on behalf of the board and other employees. Secondly, our very own Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. He will be with RTC now for 5 years as of April 10th, so coming up pretty soon on his 5-year anniversary. And lastly, Nicole Coots, who's a graphic designer and actually the author or creator of a lot of these, what I would call exceptional presentations that the board sees, not only at your meetings, but also as we communicate it out to the public. So I want to thank Nicole and acknowledge her 5 years of service also. So we have basically 3 important employees that are hitting 5 years of service, and I wanted to publicly thank them. Yesterday marked the RTC's 19th annual St. Patrick's Day free safe ride event to provide free transit on all RTC services from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. This important annual event helps people in our community get around safely while out celebrating this holiday. This event supports the Vision Zero Truckee Meadows goal of 0 pedestrian fatalities in the region by 2030. Washoe County Health District will be providing a pop-up COVID vaccination clinic at 4th Street. I know it's kind of been a subject that's lost a little attention, but they're still out giving COVID vaccinations, and they're going to use our 4th Street Station facility on Thursday, March 24th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. The clinic will provide free COVID vaccinations to people who choose to receive them. And then the last thing is just to make the board and all the public aware that at the CDC's recommendation, the TSA will extend the security directive for masks on public transportation for 1 month. It was originally set to lapse on the 18th of March, but it's been moved to April 18th. So during that time, the CDC will work with government agencies to help inform a revised policy framework for when and under what circumstances masks should be required in public transportation corridors. This revised framework will be based on the COVID-19 community levels, risk of new variants, national data, and the latest science. And we will communicate any public updates if and when they change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will move at this point into the federal report.
So a lot has happened since we last met, but let me just say the most important one is that the appropriations funding was passed. So we've moved off of the short-term extensions, which means that the programs that were funded in the IILJ and the BIL programs, which are the federal funding that you've been hearing about, are now should start flowing out. And we are, on behalf of the board and the community, very in tune with and aware of what's going to be happening with those. The announcement hasn't been made, but I think we're going to be in a good position in terms of the 2022 earmarks as far as getting some money for our, some additional federal revenue for our Arlington Avenue bridges. In addition, as the board said today, in the urgency of getting Lemon done, we are looking at putting in for earmark to accelerate the design and environmental process for the Lemon Drive project. So those are the biggest things I would say from the federal standpoint, is we now know that the funding's there, and you'll be hearing more from us as we move forward, and probably also from NDOT, as that particular approval is very critical to funding all of our transportation needs. So that concludes the federal report.
Thank you very much. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments? The question I have, will those earmark dollars and the discussion of where they will be allocated, whether expediting Lemon Drive, the Arlington bridges, maybe some improvements on North McCarran, you'll bring that back to us?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Nothing else? We'll move on to the NDOT report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to be here today. I'd like to begin the report by extending our appreciation for the dedication and kindness that so many of us experienced while working with Michael Moreno. We'd like to provide the board the current fatality information for the region. In February, there were 3 fatal crashes on Washoe County roadways. That's a decrease of 25% from the same time last year. However, motorcyclist and bicyclist fatalities remain the same as February 2021. We saw an increase in pedestrian fatalities from the same time last year. In statewide numbers, there were 46 deaths on Nevada's roadways caused primarily by speed and impairment. Nationwide, there's been an increase in fatal crashes in the past couple of years, as you're aware. This, again, is mainly from speed and impairment, which is reflective of driver choices or behavior. Earlier this month, a wrong-way crash at 2nd Street in Wells sent 2 people to the hospital with life-threatening injuries. Officials say a 28-year-old driver of a Toyota Tundra was traveling the wrong way on 2nd Street and hit another car. The car rolled and trapped 2 inside. The driver of the truck was arrested on charges of drunken driving, causing substantial bodily harm, driving on suspended license, and reckless driving. The crash occurred on a local road, but we've also seen multiple wrong-way crashes on highways across the state this month as well. As you know, safety is the department's top priority, and we strive to end these crashes. Nevada is on the leading edge of state DOTs testing wrong-way driver detection systems. NDOT is nearing the end of a 3-year study on a new wrong-way driver alert system that is preventing deadly crashes and saving lives. As part of the study, NDOT installed 37 of the systems in the state, most in northern Nevada, in the North Valleys and West Reno. Using radar technology, when the system senses a driver headed the wrong way on an off-ramp, it triggers a series of flashing lights and wrong-way signage. It also records a short video clip of the wrong-way vehicle, which is distributed in real time to law enforcement partners. During the study, we found that nearly 89% of the time a system was triggered, the wrong-way driver turned around before entering the freeway. We now have preliminary approval to continue building out the network. NDOT's currently in the bidding process, and the next phase of wrong-way alert systems should begin breaking ground in early 2023. In response to the chair's request for Washoe County traffic data over the course of 2021, we created this slide. Last year, we saw a decrease of nearly 18% in traffic fatalities in Washoe County from the year before. There were 51 deaths on Washoe County roadways in 2020, 42 in 2021. Rates of pedestrian and motorcyclist fatalities also went down, 17% down for pedestrians and 33% down for motorcyclist fatalities. The rate of bicyclist deaths remained the same. In Washoe County, we lost 1 bicyclist, 10 motorcyclists, and 10 pedestrians through 2021. Again, speed and impairment were the 2 biggest contributing factors in fatal crashes across the state in every single month of 2021. On to the Advisory Working Group for Long-Term Sustainable Transportation Funding. In January, we delivered a thorough overview to this board, and we'd like to let you know where things stand. The group met together last week on Tuesday, the 8th. All 29 members were together face-to-face in Las Vegas. We're entering possibly the most challenging part of this study, which is settling on recommended transportation revenue options for the future. At the meeting this week, the working group further reduced the number of possible funding solutions to be advanced for additional consideration and more detailed analysis. We'll be doing a deep dive into the following near-term, long-term, and flexible funding mechanisms. Near-term mechanisms that receive consensus and will be analyzed include indexing fuel excise tax statewide and increasing value-based government service tax. In the near-term mechanism category, there are also strong support for increasing fuel excise tax rate and a partial delivery fee, also potentially increasing the base vehicle licensing fee. Long-term mechanisms that receive consensus and will be analyzed further include inflation index on the per gallon excise fuel tax and light vehicle road user charge. In long-term mechanisms, there was also strong support for increasing the government service tax, increasing the base vehicle licensing fee, and a parcel delivery fee. Last, flexible funding sources that the group determined for further analysis included a street utility fee, again, increasing the government service tax and the parcel delivery fee. We saw these in the short-term and long-term categories as well. A new one we saw here was that received strong support was a carbon tax. So we've narrowed a lengthy original list to these, and these will further narrow in April. The next level of research includes a few things: financial calculations of what these mechanisms raise at the given rates, the impact by household, expected implementation costs, and et cetera, to begin documenting issues that would have to be addressed in a future system. We'll hopefully begin to understand the size of the proposed recommendation package, what they will be. Also, policy. There are guiding principles that were established by the advisory working group. So we have to take these proposed mechanisms and analyze them against those guiding principles. We have to document the issues that must be addressed for near-term adoption and for long-term transition. While there's still some work to do at our final 2 meetings, the overall study remains on schedule. We're optimistic that recommendations for future transportation funding mechanisms can be reached by the conclusion of the June meeting, which would allow for formal report drafting and refinements to happen over the summer and early fall for an on-time delivery to the legislature later in 2022. We continue to keep the board up to date on the latest regarding the Advanced Signal Warning System project. Earlier this week, NDOT began updating the select warning signals on Pyramid and Mount Rose highways. These changes are being made to provide uniformity and promote safer driver behavior, as has already been completed in other districts throughout the state. Drivers have seen intermittent daytime shoulder and evening lane closures this week while the changes have been taking place. This month, select signs which flash as the signal readies have been updated to continuously flash. The static sign has been changed from prepare to stop when flashing to a signal ahead sign. In mid-April, a second round of brief daytime closures and evening lane closures will take place. Select signs which continuously flash will be updated to static signs only. Flashers will be removed in this phase. Then in mid-May, a round of brief daytime shoulder and evening lane closures will take place. At locations where advanced signals are being removed, the sign and signal poles will be removed. All traffic signals will remain. At locations where advanced signal warning systems are being removed, the changes will be in place for 30 days per each phase before being removed. This phased approach will provide an additional visual reminder to drivers of the changes taking place and remind motorists to remain aware of the changing traffic signage. It also enables the observation of driver behavior during the phases. Sbx Project update. The project continues. Earlier this week, we celebrated women in construction. We're fortunate to have many talented women on our team and as part of the crew. Alma Pisano Ramirez is the Sbx Highway Project Manager on the left here, and Nicole Date is her Associate Engineer. By way of updates, our southbound paving continues. We're preparing to switch southbound 580 traffic to the west to complete the new southbound lanes. Last week, we temporarily relocated the Mill and 2nd Street ramps as the first step. We anticipate the traffic switch by early May. All the ramps are open at this time. The Union Pacific Railroad bridge girders have been set over 4th Street. Bridge deck pours are in the process throughout March. Retaining walls between 2nd Street and the Truckee River are in process. The eastbound I-80 to southbound 580 ramp remains reduced to 1 lane. Daytime lane reductions on Mill and 2nd Street are ongoing as well, as in continuing limited east-north Spaghetti Bowl ramp closures. Kitsky Lane has also has ongoing overnight full closures with notice provided. We remind motorists that travel delays should be expected in the area. We encourage motorists to consider alternative routes, allow for extra time, slow down, and be attentive to the new merge and lane patterns. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Do commissioners have any questions or comments? Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comments are my own. They do not reflect the RTC board. This is a scenario whereby I'm also not pointing the finger at the current NDOT administration. This has gone on for years, numerous executive directors and governors. And this is one of the latest issues that we've seen with respect to the advanced signal warning systems on the Pyramid Highway. I'm going to start by reading just a couple of things from that I have received both on social media and in emails. I won't tell you who it is because I don't think that that's fair to the authors of these. One fellow writes, "Well, NDOT has done it again. Now the yellow advance warning lights, which were flashing when the upcoming traffic lights were going to change to red, are flashing all the time on Pyramid. Some of the lights have a posted reader board which reads, 'New traffic patterns, stay alert.' To say that this latest change is confusing is putting it mildly. Why NDOT is unable to return those warning lights to their original purpose of providing a safe driving environment for the citizens who use Pyramid Highway escapes any reasonable reasoning." I won't read the rest of it because it cites some other stuff. It's not necessary. Here's another. "Wake up, NDOT. Blinky yellow lights on Pyramid flashing all the time. Really? The fix is to make all the lights flash. I'm sure some engineer got paid for this nonsense." I won't read the rest of that. I will say that this person went on to say, "Driving Pyramid is now worse as you don't know when the light will actually change now. I actually got caught in the middle of two lights changing this morning." And then another person says, "I agree this is a dumb idea because NDOT did not listen and they went ahead and made this change." And then they go on to say that if someone in their family gets harmed, they will seek a legal remedy. And then this other person says, "I almost rear-ended some guy this morning because everyone was slamming on their brakes, not knowing what to do. They're ridiculous for doing this, and someone is going to get killed." Let's see here. "I drove Pyramid Highway yesterday," this fellow states, "and felt my emotions and felt many emotions rather, but safer wasn't one of them." Let's see. And then the last one here is, "I honestly think that by making them flashing all the time is confusing because you do have people that are not aware of upcoming changes and are preparing to stop." So you can kind of see some of the, oh, this is an important one. Hold on a second here. "I watched a fully loaded haul truck yesterday go through the light at Highland Ranch Parkway. An RPD motorcycle cop pulled him over as he went through the light yellow to red. I wonder how in creation that law enforcement officer could have expected that he could stop with a full load when the lights are constantly blinking." And then another person reminds us that don't forget that he is not allowed to use his engine brake because of the noise. So that's another situation on the Pyramid Highway. With all due respect, Mr. Tedford, this is one more example on the Pyramid Highway where NDOT has made the road less safe, not more safe. I'll go through a list quickly. Right in, right out at the library, right in, right out at the Centex development. The 45 mile an hour was raised to 55 miles an hour through the center of Spanish Springs with no discussion with partner agencies. They're now forced, the folks who live rather on the west side of the highway cannot make a northbound turn movement without going to Dolores or weaving through the developments to get over to Eagle Canyon. There's just numerous issues over the last 30 years, and I've lived out there for 35 years. Saw the highway as two lanes, saw the widening of the highway, and we have not seen in 30 years any capacity improvements on the Pyramid Highway. And I'll give you one other example here. The last administration in NDOT did put in an acceleration lane coming off the Hall Road. The hope was that acceleration lane would go all the way through to where the road Y's at about Egyptian and Sunset Springs. It did not. It stops at West Calle de la Plata. You've got heavily laden trucks there. You've got a 65 mile an hour speed limit there. There's been no real improvements on the Pyramid Highway that are actually making it safer. And to say that these advanced signal warning systems, and I'll be done in just a moment here, Madam Chair, thank you for indulging me, is going to make it safer. To bring it to some statewide standard, the people that live out there don't drive these other roads in the state. They're commuters on the Pyramid Highway. NDOT should be looking at capacity improvements, thus the triggers we talked about earlier, and we've had numerous developers throughout the valley that have built out there. There's a growing need, of course, for housing throughout the region, and it has not been addressed. I will say this as a last thing. I asked and asked and asked for the traffic data that you guys used, the LiDAR data. It was never supplied to me. I had to do an FOIA request finally. It was finally given to me. In fact, I asked not only for the data on Pyramid, but I asked for it on Mount Rose Highway. I've still yet to see the data on the Mount Rose Highway. They only gave me the data on Pyramid. If you'll look in your LiDAR study at Los Altos on page 17, you'll find that an incorrect speed was used. You used a 50 mile an hour speed limit, not a 55 mile an hour, and then there was citing that some 14,000 plus cars went through the intersection at between 50 and 60 miles an hour. It's a downhill run. You would expect them to be traveling faster, and you would expect them to be traveling 55 miles an hour, which is the posted speed limit. The other thing I did not see, and the final thing is, in your studies, there was no control study to demonstrate that there was an intersection, let's say, on McCarran and Rock. We'll use that as an example. It has a downhill run on both sides where there is no advanced signal warning system to demonstrate that you do have a different driver behavior, because I don't think you do. So this has frustrated my residents in Spanish Springs beyond belief. I mean, it is the topic of choice right now, du jour, as it were. And I would tell you that most people have lost confidence in NDOT who live out in Spanish Springs, and I apologize, Madam Chair, for taking up so much time. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have an 11:30 appointment I have to go to.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Hartung, for your comments. I know you and Commissioner Dare have been advocating for a long time about your concerns with regards to removal of those flashing advanced warning system. I'll give you an example where we at the City of Reno removed something that was flashing constantly, and what happened. So if you'll recall, at Center Street and where the Renaissance is, there's a crosswalk. There's a pedestrian crosswalk there. And there was a hanging, flashing yellow light, and it constantly flashed. And it had been there for quite some time. It was when they had closed off that road, and it was just flashing all the time. Well, driving that every day, the observation and the realities is you tend to have the same people driving that road every day. And that constant flasher became white noise, and they ignored it. And it became a safety issue, not a safety deterrent. And we ultimately ended up removing it because it wasn't something that was triggered by someone who was actually using the crosswalk. It was just a constant. And that is my fear with these constant flashing lights, is just those that frequent that road and traverse it often, it's going to become white noise. I know in my travels out there, I have found valuable the advanced warning system. So kudos to you, Commissioner Hartung, for advocating for your constituents in this area. And I too have been disappointed in NDOT's response as it relates to this. Any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Okay. Commissioner Lucy.
First of all, I think that one of the discussions that Commissioner Hartung keeps bringing up is very poignant. He's led the charge on this. And Mount Rose being in the heart of mine, we have talked about this issue a number of times in regards to studies, and what goes on and the challenges and the monies that are available to do certain projects. However, what we do is at NDOT, from my opinion, it's paralysis through analysis. We just continue to study. Those corridor studies have been done time and time again, yet no real solutions have been ever proffered out of those solutions. And I think it's time that if NDOT isn't going to be assertive and move forward with making these needed safety changes in these corridors, then they should allow us to make those changes and stay out of, and let us move forward with it. RTC, we have the gas tax, we have the projects, we have the ability, we should move forward with these projects. I understand there are state highways and there's certain safety corridors that based upon geographics or standards that are national, that this is how we should start doing things, but I wholly disagree. And I think that it should be at the jurisdiction of the counties and the cities to decide whether or not certain issues are safe. These removals of the AWS on Pyramid and on Mount Rose Highway does not add for safer corridors. Those safety improvements that have been suggested through roundabouts or intersections or signalized intersections or speed changes, those should have been addressed before removing current safety equipment. And it's frustrating to me, and so I, like Commissioner Hartung, want to see these things move forward, and I'd like to see them move forward faster. So if NDOT can't functionally get those projects moving quickly, I think RTC should take that role and move forward first and find ways to make that happen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Tedford, please know that you are here today and you are receiving this. Again, it's not a personal attack on you, but as the carrier of information, and I'll give you another example. I like to put things in real examples. So I came on the council in 2012, and since the time I was first elected, one of the areas that has been discussed, studied, and had concerns about it for the entire time I've been on council has been the North McCarran area, particularly as it relates to the Leadership Way and having to force people to take a right, and then they take a UE on North McCarran to go left, and it's just it's a safety nightmare. It's all those combinations of things you don't want to have together. High speed, lots of traffic, there's even some pedestrian activity. And study after study came forward, and there was discussions about a roundabout going in there to slow traffic. And the neighbors and I were kind of excited that there might be a solution to some of the safety concerns. Well, just recently, we had another NAB meeting to discuss this item yet again, and the response we got was, well, even though back then we studied it and we suggested a roundabout might be an option, we need to study it again, and that may not be the option. And to Commissioner Lucy's point, it does feel as though there is a lot of kicking of the can, particularly with some of the interim improvements. Maybe we could partner with you to have some solutions to increase safety while NDOT does these exhaustive studies for a more grander fix. I don't know what the answer is. I also don't like letting NDOT off the hook with regards to the financial obligations that they have on their roadways, but I also have to advocate for my constituents and their safety. And so I give you that example in the event you want to look at it any further. But that goes back. I've been on, I don't know, 10 years, 9 years, 10 years.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that, and we welcome any opportunity to work on whatever project with the RTC.
Thank you very much. We have sufficiently beat the horse. Commissioner Hartung.
Yeah, just one last thing. I think if one thing can come out of this, Mr. Tedford, the culture of NDOT moving forward for future generations of administration, and that is, it would be really good to have more conversations with the local jurisdictions that these changes are being made. The example is when the 45-mile-an-hour speed limit was changed to 55 miles an hour, my staff did not know. I went in and I asked them, how come we changed that? And we contacted NDOT and found out that indeed what had happened was you guys did a speed study and the 85th percentile was traveling more than 45 or 55. Instead of adding law enforcement, you just raised the speed limit, but my staff did not know, and I'll bet you the city of Sparks staff did not know, although there's not much, even though the east side of the highway is the city of Sparks, there was, at the time, there was not much development there, so, but it would have been nice for at least my staff to be aware, because that goes essentially down through the center of many residential areas. So maybe that's this is a teaching moment for us. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I would agree, and I do think there needs to be kudos and appreciations where they're deserved as well. And I am forgetting her name right now, but she was on my neighborhood advisory board meeting, and she was very passionate and informed, and seemed to be a great asset to NDOT in helping us to get some solutions as it relates specifically to the NDOT, to the North McCarran area. So I want to give her, although I'm forgetting her name, she was quite good, and I appreciated her passion and understanding of the issues, and she vowed to make it a priority to kind of change a little bit of the culture in which you were speaking of, Commissioner Hartung. So thank you for that, and please send my thanks to her. If I could remember her name, I'll send it along. Okay, with nothing else, I don't believe we have anything else on the NDOT report. We'll move on to item 7, Commissioner announcements and updates. Commissioner Lucy, do you have anything?
Madam Chair, all I would ask is that I have sent emails to yourself and also to Director Thomas in regards to the roundabouts and Mount Rose corridor, asking for some kind of forward progression on that. Also, I would like to have staff start working on a potential realignment of Butch Cassidy Drive, bringing Butch Cassidy up into Thomas Creek Road. It's in conjunction with Washoe County to make those adjustments and those safety improvements as we're continuing. So I'd like to have those discussions. I have had some discussions also with Cole Mortensen via email in regards to improvements at Crystal Bay. In regards to, there are some new developments that are happening at the Crystal Bay area, but we have the right-of-way belong at Crystal Bay at State Line there, is owned by NDOT, but the sidewalks are deteriorating there, and so we want to work with our NDOT to kind of improve some of those discussions, and then that's it. We were also working with TTD at the Epid Incline in regards to kind of their bus station and some economic development up there, so I've been working with that. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one last thing for staff, and I don't know whether we have really looked at this, but I continue to get requests for FlexRide microtransit out in the sort of the deeper areas in Spanish Springs. We've got multiple senior living facilities going in that are 55 plus. They're transitional housing projects, and it would be they're not commuters. Many of these folks, in fact, I was talking to one the other day, and she said, "I'm afraid to drive Pyramid Highway now, and there is no transportation out there." So if we can look at, and I don't know how it affects our ADA lines, but regardless of that, we're probably going to have to change our ADA lines anyways, because as these communities grow and we do get more seniors out there, we are going to see a greater need for transit for that segment of the population. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, and I agree, and I think that would be part of our discussion earlier about the restructuring of our transit options. I think the creative answers are there for those facilities rather than a full route, full bus. One of the public commenters talked about, and I know we've talked about at length, having some sort of roundtable discussions with the drivers and getting their street level sort of feedback on their experiences and ideas and suggestions. I think there's great value in that, and so I know we've talked about it in the past, so I just bring that up again to facilitate those discussions with our very valued drivers. Commissioner Hartung.
One last thing, Madam Chair. Mr. Spear, maybe you can bring us back. I'd like to understand the legality of capping or pausing the RTC 5 indexing. What our commission, the Washoe County Commission's role would potentially be in that. Is it something that we actually can act on? Does it require a legislative change because it was voter approved and a voter approved initiative? So I'd really like to understand at least our perspective. I know we've given some statements to the press, but I think it's incumbent upon us to understand how that operates, whose purview it's in, and if we did want to deal with that in some way, shape, or form, who can actually act on it, and you know, what are the limitations, i.e. timing? I mean, is it something that we can institute permanently or put a pause, or again, just because it is voter approved, it was voter approved, I would like to understand how that indexing works.
And we'll prepare that and we will distribute it, and you can expect that very soon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. And then the final thing, if we could, I think, as was displayed here earlier about the great outpouring of love and recognition of the contributions of Michael Moreno to this organization and this community, I would like to see if we could explore some sort of a Michael Moreno scholarship from the RTC, something that we could carry his great name and his contributions forward to future generations. Okay. I think that's it. Madam Clerk, do we have any closing public comment?
We do not.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. May I get a motion to adjourn? I got a motion. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks.